So that should be enough for introduction. I hope Lerwe is all right and she can share her screen now so that we can start with the generator part of this webinar. Have a lot of fun, and Lerwe, please unmute your phone and start your webinar.
Yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar about Generator4. I will share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. This training session will be about, well, firstly, about the general usage of Generator4, the GUI and how to move the model, hide and show parts, and some general stuff about how to work with Generator. And later, I will be showing some examples, some little examples about how to get a middle play done based on a volume geometry. Generator here open. For this session today, I will be using some examples. For us, they are located under Tecus1. I hope you all have access to that. If not, just please let me know and I will give it to you or make it available to you. So it's in the Tecus1 data Austausch G4 training by GNS. So today I will be using this folder, guide introduction, and later on the middle play examples. So here you have the generator. This is the main GUI. So there you can see different areas or different working areas. For example, you have here the main menus. As usual in all programs, you have some file options to open, close, or save your data. The solver menu to choose which solver are you working with. The view, offering some options for managing the view of the model. Some tools, the access to the user settings. So you can customize your generator GUI and some options on how you like to work or which options you want to be pre-default defined in your generator session, such kind of things. Then some special menu for the safety area, which is one of the important areas in generator for positioning in all kind of safety areas. And some connection utilities between animator and generator. And then here the help, which is really important menu because it contains the manual. Here you have the access to the manual, which you can consult anytime to get some information about the different commands and options from generator. It's not the most extensive manual, but it's some area we're working on in improving this manual. Apart from the manual here, so you have the access to it and the different options and areas are described. But apart from this, you have also some tutorials with examples you can consult and you can use to train in generator at first. So for example, for us internally, they are located under Apple GNS, Generator4, document or doc. And for example, for the current version 1.5, you have here a lot of tutorials. And for each tutorial, you have some files which you can use for follow the tutorial. So with that, you can learn a lot about how to use generator. So that thing said, I will load a little model in generator to show you the different areas or working areas. So I said in G4 training, first folder, and here I have some little filter where I can choose what type of file I want to load. In this case, it's a native format, the Generator4 database. So I can click on it and then I see, okay, this is the introduction example. So I can just click on open and I get my model here in Generator. So with this, I can better explain the different areas for Generator. So as you see, here it's the main area where you can see the graphic and the model. Then you have, apart from the menu here, some toolbars at this area. Those are the ones that we have predefined for the users, but each user can define its own toolbars and adapt it to their needs. So for example, here, the main one for opening and closing and saving data, undo and redo, it's located here. Here you have some toolbar for centering the model and some view options. For example, if you want to see it in shaded models, solid models, or this kind of things to handle the model view. And then some direct access to model information. For example, if you want to check some coordinates, you can use these options here. Or if you want to check the normals in your model, so you can do it here. So it's information toolbar. Then you have some toolbar for handling the views. I will explain this later on, and some quality or checks toolbar for checking the mesh quality and also penetrations and so on. So these are the ones provided by default, but as I said, you can create your own toolbars. That's under settings to be done. So next area is the command group area. This one here, which gives you access to all the different commands available in Generator. So it's organized in different groups. The two first ones offer access to all of them. The difference between them, it's this one it's organized in the way that it's programmed. So maybe for the final user, it's not so easy to look for a command. You even have access to some testing commands in the internal version that are not really in the final version, are just for testing purpose. So, but for the user, you can always have the all. Here it's more user-oriented organized, and you have here access to a set to all the commands, so grouped in different based on the action they are doing. So creating objects, modifying them, deleting them, just the positioning and safety areas, and for getting information, checking or handling the views. And then you have also other groups created based on kinds of work you may be doing. So for example, if you are working with geometry, correcting geometry or creating a middle plane or adapting some geometry, you would be most likely working only or almost only with this command group, where you have all the commands related to that kind of work. Then you have the mesh command group with all the commands related to meshing processes and adapting meshes. Then the element group command, which is most likely to be used, for example, for also adapting the mesh, but more when you don't have a geometry as a baseline, or you have to make some little modifications in your model. Then you have the physics group containing all the commands for connections and other physics definitions in your model. And then two command groups specially dedicated to the solvers, LS-DYNA or PAMGRASS. Then the one for the positioning, and two other groups for getting information and checking the model. So they are organized, as said, in a way that you most likely don't need to change from one group to another. Sometimes you do, but mostly we try to group all the commands needed there. So this is the commands area. Then you have here another area, the data browser, which shows you all the content of your currently loaded model. So it gives you a good overview of what it's currently being loaded in Generator. For example, you have the different files that you may have loaded or the different properties. You can get a list always by double clicking there, or some of them, the most important, have a direct access here. So for groups, you get the list, materials, or properties. If you are really working a lot with this data browser, for some of the list, you may need to scroll here sometimes, but also you have the opportunity to double click there, and then you get it detached. And so you can make it bigger here, and so Generator will remember this this side, so you can double click in there and get it detached again if you needed to quickly see something completely in the list. Then the next area here, it's the command line. So like in Animator, you always have the option to work with Generator with command lines. So for example, error all hides everything, or add all brings everything into show. Here you have the history of what you have used, so you can always use it again quite comfortably and write it here. The next one is the message area. Here you get basically feedback from Generator about what is going on your model. If there is some error or some warning, Generator will communicate it here in this area. And then this last area, which is the current command. So this area is used for the different commands, and it's highly dependent on which command you are using. So for example, here it's the identify command activated, and you can see here all the different options and parameters that Generator offers for that command. They are different for each as said for each command, because every command is different and has different options, but there are some general structures there. So first of all, you will always find a selection area, which allows the user to specify which objects are to be selected. So for example, here for identify, I can click, okay, I want to check, or I want to select only nodes. So just activate this, and then you are sure you are only selecting nodes. Or if you want to select properties, then you activate this. Depending on what, you can also activate several of them, and then you are likely to select different kinds of objects. And then you have some methods for selection. I will go on with this later on. And each command has its own parameters and options here. But mainly you have two areas, the selection area, which helps you to decide what and how something has to be selected, and then the parameters area, highly dependent on the command. So generally, for managing the model, you will be using the mouse. It's in Generator, it's a little bit different from maybe some other softwares. You have the right mouse, left click for selection. So I will select some property with left click, it's selected. Then you have middle mouse for this selection, and generally also right mouse for confirming something. So if I click right mouse here on the identify, I get this property identified. So I can clear all the labels here. Also how to move the model. So if you press the Control And with left click, you can rotate the model. With Control and right click, you can rotate the model, but in the with the axe, using an axe that it's normal to the view plane, like this. Where you click is where the axe is taken. So where you click at first, it's where the rotation axe is being taken. And then with Control and middle mouse, you can move the model. That's for the model moving and so. Then you have different styles here. First of all, let me explain. You have here in this model several all kinds of objects. For example, I can go on to the database and then you can see, okay, there are some materials, elements, properties, but there is also some geometry here. So you can see the different kinds of objects. So in Generator, these green lines and dotted lines represent surfaces. Then you have also faces, the ones that are used at the end to be meshed. They are, let me put them on in show. They are these ones represented by blue lines and dots. In the boundary style, if I change to the solid style, you can see them solid, so they are normally blue or green in the rear side. Then you have also curves on surfaces, which are these lines. They can have three colors, as normally yellow means it belongs to two surfaces together that are pasted together. Red, it means that it's only belonging to one face. And blue means that it belongs to three faces at a time. I think here there is no example of a blue line, but you know what's, oh, here, yes. So this one from this rib would be belonging to three faces. So how these objects are shown can be easily be handled here with this toolbar. So if I put the elements in show also, you can see, okay, you can see only in boundary style, just in grid, shaded grid, or I can do it solid. So one important thing is that this toolbar affects all of the elements. The style can be also handled here by using these options in the data browser, but these ones affect only what is selected in here. So for example, if I click on element and I click, okay, I want it to be solid, it just affects the elements in this. If I also select elements in geometry and click on solid, then it affects both kind of items. So it's a way to handle the model and to get the view that you want to be using. So for example, geometry in boundary style and the elements in shaded is quite comfortable to be. So this is for the style. Then you usually want to hide and show things and work with the model to work with the commands more comfortably. So to only have him show what you really need to have. So there are several options in Generator to handle the visibility of the elements. I've been using them already. One is by using the data browser and the options here. So show only and hide. There are also some toolbars here to show or hide the different kinds of elements depending on the type. And there's also a dedicated command for that, just to be more selective. So for example, if I just want to hide some elements, I can do it in this way. But I also can go on here and select all the elements or just all the trias and hide them, make them visible again, for example, or use these toolbars here. So for example, I can make only visible one property. So I click there, click my property and confirm with right mouse. Then I get only that property in view. There is a fourth option to handle the visibility, and that it's accessible with right mouse. If you keep the right mouse a little bit pressed a little bit, then you get some extra options here, and it's quite like animator. So you can show all or hide in some box or wherever. This works pretty much like animator. For this. These are the different ways in which one can show or hide the different objects. So I tend to combine all of them. Not depending on the case, it's more comfortable to select it here or just graphically or wherever. So if we go to the identify command, I can show you different kinds of selection in Generator. So for all the commands, you have this area here, which is pretty specific thing from Generator. For selecting things in Generator, you have always three selection methods, or not methods, models in Generator, which are defined by when do you apply this selection, or when do you apply this command or this action to the selection you have done. So immediate means that, for example, I'm in identify property, and if I have immediate, just when I click, I get the command done, so it identifies it immediately. Then you have delay, which means, okay, you can select something, you get it highlighted, but you have to confirm the selection. So for identify, it's not the most important thing, but if you are using other commands like delete things or move things or rotate things, you may want to control what you are selecting. So this is pretty useful for almost all the commands, the delay option to check what you have selected. And then there's a third option offered only in some of the commands where it really makes sense, that it's the persist option. That means you can click something, you get it highlighted, you can confirm the action, and afterwards, after the action is done, you still have the selection activated. So the selection is still there. So for example, this is pretty interesting, for example, in identify, to get them unidentified right away, because it's like a toggle. Or for example, for other commands like rotate, if you are not sure how much you want to rotate some part, then you can keep on going and you don't have to reselect everything. So these are the three ones. Mostly I recommend working with delay for almost all the commands, and in some specific cases persist or immediate for some easy commands you are not going to break anything. Then the next area, I have already explained a bit of it. It defines what kind of objects can be selected. So for example, I here have properties, but I could select different ones. So just nodes and elements. That means I can pick all the elements and nodes and select them with the middle mouse. So the middle mouse, the deselection, it's also based on these things that you have here activated. So you can use it also in a way, for example, if you have selected everything and you say, okay, I didn't want the elements to be selected, then you can activate only elements, and then the deselection is only gonna work for the elements. So it's a good way in which you can combine things to get the objects selected that you want. So, and then you have also here a third thing, that it's the selection method. Generator has a lot of different selection methods. If I activate more things, you get more. And these are the ways in which you select the thing. So this is what you select, and this is how you select it. So direct is what I've been using pretty much all the time for now. You just click something and get it that item selected, but you have also different kinds of options. For example, the top to the box, you can click and create some kind of area which is closed then, and everything that is inside it will be selected. As you see, nodes and elements and geometry items that are inside this box that I have done are selected. You can also always use clear to make the selection disappear. And for example, other methods between, then you can, for example, select nodes that are in between and such things. Angle or group, or so there are different kinds of selection methods, and depending on the command and on what you want to select, they really are really useful in order to save some time. Also, you can combine it. So for example, if you say, okay, I want to pick all the nodes that belong to some property. So let me look for a good example. These ones. So I have all of them, but I decide, okay, these ones in this area, I don't want them. So you can go change the selection method and say, okay, I want to deselect these ones by angle. So I click there and I get all of them here deselected. So the combination of methods and objects you want to select or deselect, it's really useful when it comes to get a proper selection. So this is more or less all I wanted to explain about the general usage of Generator. Now we'll change to the other topic, a little bit more interesting maybe for today. That it's the middle play generation in Generator. So I will close the session. Don't want to save anything. And here I will open the next example. So for the middle play, this is going to be mostly a geometry work. So I will be using mainly this command group, basically one of the commands, the middle play one. So I will open the next example. It's located here, 03 middle ply. And I will select this one, tutorial geometry middle ply. It's an IGES format. When you select some file type here on the filter, for some of the formats, you get some extra options. So for example, for the geometry, Generator offers to run automatically some topology corrections and the option to hide the surfaces, make them invisible, which is pretty comfortable normally. So I will activate these two and leave these two deactivated. This is hiding the topos or the hot points from the geometry. I don't need it. I will be working with them. So I leave them in the view, and I don't need to create some faces and empty surfaces. The geometry in this case is pretty clean. So I will open this and I get the example. This is basically the example used in the tutorial. There's a tutorial also done and some documentation for this part. As I said previously, you can have them on the Apple GNS and documentation. And basically, I'm gonna reproduce the tutorial. So for getting the middle plane, it's one good thing of Generator that you don't really need a super cleanup geometry. There may be some errors and holes in the geometry. Generator can go along with these little problems and tries to create a middle plane. It's not such a thing that if you have some little hole and it's not a completely closed volume, it doesn't make the middle plane. So I will just delete it a little bit. Imagine this geometry is pretty clean, but imagine that you have a little error here. There's a missing face. Even if you have such things, the middle plane command will perform the action and will create the middle plane. Of course, if you really have really problematic geometry, it will reflect on the results. So it's better to work with a good geometry and clean geometry, but it's not really necessary to have it perfect. So the command we are going to use is located here under geometry, face, new, middle plane. So basically, I will be working with this command. As you can see, there is the selection area. Here you don't have the filter option to save space because basically you are only here allowed to select faces. So there's no need for such filter. But the methods and all the other options, you have it in here, so the selection. And then you have the concrete parameters for this command. So the first one is the property. You can give a property to be used as target for the created middle plane. In that way, when Generator creates this new geometry, it will automatically have this property ID. So I can also describe an ID that doesn't really exist yet in my model. So for example, I give 50. In this example, there's only geometry. I don't have any property yet, but it doesn't matter because Generator will create it automatically. It will be a plain property with no material definitions and no extra definitions, but the card will be created. If I had any card already and I'm sure I want to use it, I could always access to this card here on the list. Then if I have properties, I would see them here and I could select one of them. But as said, in this model, I don't have yet any properties, so I can give just an ID and it will be used. Then the next option is how you assign sites. There are 3 methods for this command in Generator. Basically, what Generator does is evaluating this volume geometry and tries to detect what is front side, rear side, and the edge of the volume. So for the human eye, this is or can be really easy to see, but for software, it's not so easy. And therefore, there are 3 options. So the first one is the manual. There you can do everything manual. So you can click on which sides you think it's the front side. They are marked in this pink. Confirm the selection with right mouse and then say OK. Rear would be these ones. They are marked then with green. Confirm with right side and then maybe say OK. This will be my edge. So this is one option, but it takes some time. So you have to select everything. You have also other options. You can also do it automatically. In that way, Generator just evaluates the geometry and decides for himself what is front, rear, or edge in this volume. Works pretty good, especially when the part is easy. But sometimes if the geometry is a little bit tricky, or if you have a lot of ribs and things, it's good to have a check on what generator thinks the geometry is doing. So therefore, you have a third option, which is the one I personally recommend. It's the interactive one. There you select all the faces just by drawing a mouse box, or just clicking here on active. You can get everything selected. Then you can confirm, okay, everything is selected, it's okay. Right mouse for confirming. And then generator evaluates this part. And instead of automatically creating the middle ply, it lets you check what he thinks. So it shows, okay, I think all these parts, the pink ones are the front side, all the green ones are the rear side, and here, this is what I think about edges. There is another there are some other parameters that are really important on how generator determines which face is acting as what. So which one is front and rear and so. And these are the next three ones. They are really important for the command, and it's worth to define them correctly. So I will reload the command and explain them first. So maximum thickness is, generator looks for pairs of faces in order to get the front and rear. So this is a maximum gap that it's allowed to be used. We have defined this default values as the most commonly ones that fit almost all the examples we had, but maybe you had to adapt them a little bit. So if you give a really high value here, it will find probably more pairs of faces than it is supposed to. So for example, in here, maybe it will think that this and this one are not just a pair, but that this one and this one, or this one and this one are another pair of faces. So it's good to adjust it a bit for some geometries. Then there's another option here that creates reference groups. This is not so important for the command itself, but it's really, really useful for working afterwards and for checking the results. What it does is it creates a group of geometry for the volume selected and a group of geometry for the created faces, so the middle ply. And it makes it really comfortable to use with afterwards, because you can change the styles and so in a faster way and check the model really easy. And then you have this parameter here. This is really, really useful to be used. This is the rounded edges parameter. So for example, if you notice here, for sometimes you have this rounded transitions from one face to another. This sometimes confuses a software, and therefore it thinks, okay, it's the same side, but in reality it's not. So for example, here it's really important to get a difference between this side and this side. So this helps with such definitions. If I now click everything and let generator evaluate this model, I will get a better pre-definition of the sides. So here you have the different ones, and here you can see it's wrong. This is green, so rear side, and here it's also. This is because of this parameter. I changed the value before, so it's not the default one, and that's why it's not a good fitting. So you can recalculate it, and you will see the difference it makes. So with a good value, in this case the default one, it detects that this is a transition area, and this and these are not in reality not the same not the same thing. They should be treated differently. So it's really worth it to have a little time to check if all the definitions are really correctly taken, because it will reflect on the results. So it's good to give it some time to check the model. This one looks really good now. So one side is rose, pink, the other side is green, and the edges are all marked red, except for the rounded ones that are used to the definition. So with right mouse, I can confirm this command, and then generator creates the middle surface. So if you see, now I have everything in solid modules, so it's a little bit complicated to see, and that's where the option of creating reference groups comes along and helps a lot. So here you have two groups automatically created for the middle geometry and outer geometry, and with this I can easily change the style, and with that I can check the results. This is really interesting, the option. So with this you can also check visually of if the results are correct. They all seem pretty good. Also here, results seem to be correctly. Of course, this is the tutorial example, so it's some example that has been really tested a lot. So it's doing a pretty good work with it. I will show you now a different example in which maybe I can create some errors on purpose to show some extra things about the middle ply creation. So now I will go on with the second example. And I import it just as I imported the first one. Complex geometry. And I will create the middle ply for this. So one interesting thing always before using this middle ply command is the middle ply has default values from maximum thickness of 3 millimeters and rounded edge radius of 1. These are working good for the majority of the geometries we have been testing and the most common ones. But maybe if you have a different one or just really thin volume or whatever, maybe it's worth it to adapt these values. And how to get meaningful values for this? One can always go to the info area here, the command group, and evaluate a little bit the geometry you are working on with before you attempt to create the middle ply. So for example, here we can check the thickness of the volume we have. And I just activated it and just click on different areas of the surface. So I can see, okay, the majority is already also 3 millimeters, but there are some thickness changes over the geometries. You can see there, it goes from 1.5 to 2.3. And for example, here, I think it was a little bit thicker. So it's changing a little bit. When I try to lift this command, this checking or information command with right mouse, if I don't have anything selected, right mouse also uses to is used to exit a command. Generator asks me, okay, this maximum thickness that you have tested is 3.13. We can automatically use it afterwards in the middle ply. You want to save it, then you can say yes, and generator will save this information for later on. For the other parameter, the curve radius, you can also perform a similar action. So you can evaluate the curvature of the model for those little areas, where it's not a feature but a transition from one side to the next one, and just check what are these radiuses that the part or the volume here is using. Check them, and then, as before, for example, we'll take also here and some bigger ones. Yeah, you can see. And as before, as I click right mouse to exit the command, it asks me, okay, we have this information. Should we use it for the multiply command? Then you can click on yes, and when you go to the command multiply, so on the geometry group, face new multiply, it automatically adapts these values to better fit the geometry you are working with. So in this case, they are pretty similar to the standard ones. It's not such a big difference, but for volumes in a different range or something like that, it really makes a difference. So I will clean up the layers here, labels, and I will just perform the multiply. So in this case, I will also define a target property ID, and I will use the interactive method for creating the multiply. So I click on active, select everything in my model, and with right mouse confirm the action. And here, in this case, Generator tells me, okay, there were some errors in your basic data. As I said first, Generator doesn't really need perfect cleaned geometry. It tries and creates a multiply, but depending on how clean this geometry is, maybe there are some, so it reflects on the results. So it says, okay, there were some triple cones there. This may hamper the results, but do you want to continue anyway? Yes, in this case, there are just 8 little cones. I don't know where, just little. So basically the geometry is correct. So I can say, okay, go anyway, try. And then Generator shows me what was detected as front, rear, and edge, and I can check it. For example, here, you can see there are some things that are not correctly detected. You can always change this definition. So until Generator, okay, this, you can click there, and with right mouse confirm the selection and say to Generator, okay, that these faces, they are not really a front size, they should be a rounded edge. They should be considered as such a rounded edge, and then it changes. I will change to the direct selection. It's always there, this method for selection, and I can continue on checking the model. So it's really interesting to spend some minutes checking the model and saying, okay, this one, this is not really a rounded edge, but the rear side of the volume I am working with. So I will change it and say, okay, this should be the rear side. And then one can continue like this, checking if everything was detected correctly. So for example, here, these are some rounded edges, but this one is really a big difference. I will need some face there, so it's always better to treat them in this case as the rear side, not as a transition. So you can select all of them, right click and say, okay, this should be treated as rear side. And for example, this one is not an edge, should be front side. Another interesting or useful thing is that internally the front side is used as the basic data. So it's always interesting to have the front side selected as the one that is more clean. So, for example, let me show you here between this and this side. This is a bit more clean here. There are more cuts here going on, some ribs here. It's a bit more complicated, this side, than the other. So it's whenever you have the chance, it's better to have the front side as the one that it's cleaner. So for example, here, this one just has two holes, but on the other side, it also has some ribs, and so it's better to select them, the front side and the rear side, in such a way. Here, it was, oops, sorry. The selection hasn't gone really well, but I will leave it as it is, so I can have a little error later on to explain you some extra things. With right mouse, Generator then creates, evaluates it and creates a middle ply. I get this middle geometry and outer geometry groups to easily check the model in a visual way. It even got this area here quite well. This is some difference in the thickness, which is normally kind of tricky to get. And also such ribs and everything. I can hide this volume with hide here and check everything is correctly connected and that these clips are created correctly. So, but I left some area here without on purpose wrongly selected. So everything was marked red, so everything was detected as edge, and therefore it's not possible to create this area. Best option would have been to correct the selection, then it would have created correctly. But now I have the opportunity to show you some extra commands on how to deal with such areas when the middle ply is not able to create the geometry correctly. So first of all, you can always use the same command, the middle ply, and just select what you want to work. What you want to correct. So I could hide the middle geometry to better see everything and make the outer geometry again solid. And I could say, okay, just perform now this middle ply evaluation just for this area, which I forgot to check, and create the middle ply. That's one option. Maybe it's interesting if you have different areas in your volume and one it's really thin and the other one it's really thick. You may need to use different parameters here. So that's one option. But there are more. You can also, I will use the boundary style now to show it better. You can also use the middle option here. It's another command. It's like a really simplified version of the middle ply. You are able to select just two faces and then Generator creates automatically one in the middle. Another option is something similar. You can, for example, create some extra topos here to divide this curve, and you can create a middle curve. So you can here, well, you have several options for the IDs, but it's not really important in this case. You can click and select some curves for one side, right mouse to confirm the selection, and then select a second group of curves, right mouse to confirm the selection, and you get the middle curve of this. So these are different options to correct such kind of areas where the middle play, in case the middle play doesn't work. For all the commands, you always get a hint here on what you have to select. So now I see I'm selecting the front curves, right mouse. Now I have to select the rear curves. I can select them here. So on with right mouse, it will create another curve. In that way, I can use these two to get the middle plane, one middle face created here. That's with face, new, standard. And then I can select what I want to select to be used as boundary, as basis for creating the face. So there are several options, but for this one, I'm based on curves or cons. So I can click on here, and with right mouse, I get this face created. A different approach is to use, for example, the offset option. Here for this curve, I can, for example, offset this surface. So with the right distance, it fits in the middle. This command is located here under General Offset, and here I have the options. So what I want to offset is a face, and in this case I can check with some tool here and check, okay, what was here exactly the distance, the gap, 1.5. So I have to offset the face 0.75. I want to duplicate the face. It's not that I want to move this one or adapt this one, but I want to create a new one. So I can click on here, and with right mouse, it gets duplicated and created in the middle. So I can hide the geometry, the outer geometry, and clear it. Get my middle geometry again in view. And now I can correct this area. So as I created it in different ways and different steps for showing you the different commands, I have some gaps here. I can paste, for example, these cons to be so the faces lie together, or here, or also here. So I get all the faces together. So these are mainly the most important ones for correcting little issues in the geometry. Here I can show an extra one. There is a last command I want to show that it's really useful for such works. That is the extend command under face extend, and it, for example, it's useful to correct such things. Here, for example, the cut between the basic face and this rib wasn't correctly done. So I can extend this face, this one, up to this one to get it correctly connected. That can be done with the extend face. There's an extension mode called select target. And here, as the hint tells me, I can select the face I want to expand. Then the curve and surface, the cons, I want to modify that one. And then my target. So here I will select the things here that could be used as target. And with right mouse, it expands or extends this surface or this face, sorry, to get it connected with the other. So this is the last command I wanted to show you about working with middle ply and some corrections for middle ply. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm always available. If you need some explanations or any extra further examples, I can gladly prepare them and try to help. If not now, I'm always available via email or per telephone or using Teams. So it's pretty easy to reach me, I guess, I hope. And yep, that was all from my side.
Lere, we have one question coming from the audience.
Yeah.
It's Carsten who wanted to know, can I auto switch from front and rear side?
Auto switch. To select all the front sides.
Switch it to back.
So to sweep them. Not directly. Not directly, but let me show you something. There's like a workaround. So if you have only the volume here, I select my thing, right mouse, yes, and then it checks and says, okay, this is what I think it's front and rear. You can use this option here, assign new properties to sides. In that way, Generator creates 3 different properties. Now I had some properties before, but 3 or 4, taking into account the rounded edge one, in order to facilitate the selection later on. So suppose I have I enter again the command and I want to select them, and now I could change to manual and just select by properties. So I could select this one that was what previously was found by Generator as this was found as front. So I will select this one and make it the front selection, right mouse. Now I will select the rear. In this case, I select what was found, so the property that was found as front at the beginning, right click, and now I can select the other one. So the first it asks for the boundary, right mouse, and then the rounded edge. So in this way, it's not a direct flip, but a faster way to get it. Just to save the selection or what Generator found into different properties, and then like do the selection again by using properties. So I hope I could clarify that.
Thank you. It was clear for me. I don't know. Any more questions? The question list is quite short now. No. I got some off-channel feedback from a colleague who was quite satisfied and found it nice, and he learned a lot in the last hour.
Oh, that's good.
So you can give me some feedback on the attendance if you are interested in further webinars. We have maybe content for 1 or 2 more webinars where you can see some other interesting parts of Generator. You can feedback it by email to me or write it down in the question and answer as long as it is open. On the other side, I want to thank Lea for this interesting webinar, and
Welcome.
Thank you for 25 people attending it and learning about Generator all the time.